Well, it's a new season on in the F1 world, and I am back on the grid. After I managed to get some talks with ALFA and ROMEO, they decided to sign me for the 2019 season, and I'll be partnering Kimi Raikkonen as he decided to depart Ferrari at the end of 2018 to go to Sauber as rising star Charles Leclerc has taken his seat. I'm not too sure exactly how I'm going to perform in this season, but hopefully I can do decent enough to keep my seat and not get dropped halfway through the season like McLaren did, which would be very disappointing for this to happen 2 seasons in a row, which definitely isn't a very good career to be honest, but yeah, we'll see what will happen, and yeah, hopefully the first race in Australia will give us something good. Yo, what is good guys, and welcome back to our F1 Ultra Career Mode. We're now in a new season, in a new team, and this is part 9 of the series. We're going to be heading into Australia, and yeah, I'm at a new team, which I'm really happy about, because McLaren and I don't get why they drop me off for the season, but I hope this season's going to be miles better, to be fair, than last season, and we can even get some good results.
Welcome to your new team. Alfa Romeo Racing is the kind of team that other privateers aspire to be. No matter the challenges they face, this is a team that rises to the occasion and makes it out the other side. They need someone who can be consistent, resilient, and determined, and there's no doubt in my mind that you can give them those qualities.
Well, Emma, I think I can get those qualities, to be fair, as I'm a pretty consistent driver. So yeah, we have Australia as the first round of the season, and we get a welcome and emails from everyone. So Frederick, Carl, Emma, and Jeff. Okay, so, and the team has given us hard goals, so we have to finish 13th or better in 2 races. Wait, no, within 2 races, which will give us 600 R&D points. And the race overall will be dry, qualifying will be cloudy, so we have to finish at least 18th or higher
which will help make it easier to negotiate
to meet the team standards. And look at the R&D chart, it does seem like that Alfa Romeo have the second worst car, but they are just behind Toro Rosso and Renault, and then we have fresh components, which I hope these can last for a lot longer. Because I had 1,200 spare R&D points, I decided to maybe do some upgrades, and eventually I looked at what we could do, to be fair, so I decided to do some reliability upgrade, because I really want some reliability stuff, and plus the upgrade will be ready by Bahrain. So yeah, and eventually I did a aerodynamic upgrade, I think. No, I couldn't do an aerodynamic one, but I think I did a powertrain upgrade. Yeah, I couldn't afford any of the aerodynamic ones. And Carl suggested to do a chassis upgrade, so I did that. So now we have a little bit of an upgrade, and yeah, let's head to Australia. I don't know if it's just me, but I think the intro was like broken because it didn't show qualifying 1, so I decided to just skip, and it just kept showing the Australian beach without loading into qualifying, so I don't know what that is about. It might just be a game bug, to be fair, so yeah. Anyways, with that out of the way, it's time we get into qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix, and to be fair, I had high hopes since last time out in the 2018 game, we qualified P12, showing that we did actually have some pace, and I hope we still have pace in this car, even though I think this car is technically worse than the McLaren from this year, to be fair. So if I actually stay with McLaren for 2018, I would have actually had a chance to be in a pretty good midfield car, but that didn't happen, of course. So yeah, let's get into this qualifying lap. As for the first corner, I went off the grass, but it was actually a little bit of debris coming towards me. I have no idea what that was, and I think what happened ahead was Alex Albon and Charles Leclerc may have collided with each other, as I think one of them had damage, as it looked like a Red Bull end plate, so it was probably Albon's wing, as yeah, he was now really struggling, to be fair, which didn't really help, to be honest, but because he was holding off Leclerc, maybe I could get slipstream from one of them, or maybe both of them, I'm not sure, to be fair, because I really want to get into Q2 and not be disappointing like Q1, as we might have gone a little bit held up from Leclerc here, but he does eventually let us pass, and with Albon having a front wing damage, this eventually meant that if he slowed down just enough, I could actually catch up to him and get DRS. As we're going to go absolutely quick through these set of corners, to be fair, this is one of my favourite corners for some reason, even though you can easily do a mistake here, which is why it's a bit risky. And maybe I should have put a little bit less fuel into the car because we had almost 4 laps of fuel. So yeah, but we have closed down Albon, and because he's now close to us, this means we could get a little bit of slipstream from him. As running off the final 2 corners, we are getting a bit close to him, and this corner I just hate because I can never do it properly, and we do get a little bit of slipstream from Albon, so this should help us a bit. And this lap will bring us P10 just behind Perez and ahead of Ricciardo. So we are in the fight in the midfield. I knew I could go a lot quicker though, so eventually I let Leclerc pass, and yeah. I will just go into the pits eventually because there was not really anything else to do. After everyone practically did their lap, Sebastian Vettel was first, and it was just the usual top 6 teams at the top, and Raikkonen was P12, whilst we were P16. Russell still hadn't done his lap yet, and Albon had a terrible lap because of course he got the front wing damage. So yeah, I knew we could probably go a lot quicker to be fair, so I eventually went out for my final lap of Q1, and hopefully this should get us into Q2. So you guys can see what happened.
30 seconds left in the session.
I mean, to be fair with that Delta, we would have probably made it into Q2 anyways, and we do make it into Q2 as we're PA with a very strong lap. So yeah, that was a very good lap. That was what I wanted, to be fair. So, overall, there's not really any surprises. Alex Albon was eventually 10th, so if he didn't do a great lap, he would have been eliminated. So overall, it's Kvyat, Grosjean, and Stroll, and both Williams out in Q1, and Raikkonen barely makes it through, you know. So, yeah. Happy to see both cars in Q2, and yeah, let's move on to Q2 now. So eventually moving on to Q2, the session was a little bit shorter, so we had to probably do 2 laps just to maybe have a chance at Q3. Considering we were P8 in Q1, I knew there was a chance for Q3, but I don't know if it was really likely with this type of car, to be fair. As we actually encountered a little bit of traffic with the Renault Hulkenberg just coming out of the pit lane, and I wanted to get past him, so I don't know why, but I tried to send him down the inside, and I mean, I got past him, but that was a pretty bad way to take the corner, which made me probably lost a little bit of time, which didn't really help. But luckily for me, the rest of the lap was pretty clean, and there wasn't really any mistakes, to be fair, as this final corner did a lot better, to be fair, than the previous laps, and eventually rounding off, going to the checkered flag, we eventually set a 1 minute 24.5, and we're between Ricciardo and Gasly, so I don't know if that will be enough for Q2, Q3, well, probably not, to be fair, but it wasn't an old set of tyres, so it doesn't really tell much, to be fair. Eventually, after most people did their lap time well, everyone except Perez, who was just finishing his, I was P13 with Kimi in P10, and we got a little bit of wing damage whilst on our in lap, so yeah, our lap time was pretty bad as our final sector was pretty poor, but hopefully we could improve and get into Q3. Well, unfortunately, as a matter of fact, that did not happen, because I did something a little bit stupid. You see, because I forgot to change my settings, I eventually slowed down so I could change my fuel and ARS deployment to the max possible. But because I slowed down, and I went out a little bit too late, I missed the flag to start my lap, and eventually I missed the flag by like 2 tenths, well, like a couple of tenths, and eventually we qualified P15. So we didn't even get a chance to do a second lap. I mean, if we did, we would have probably still been P15 to be fair, because the delta set on the soft tire, if we improved, we would have barely changed to be fair. And Raikkonen was P12, which unfortunately meant he didn't make it either. So yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. But we have the race now, so let's get into the race, I suppose.
New drivers, new cars, it's a new Formula One season. But it's the same Albert Park that we've come to know and love for more than 2 decades now that plays host to round 1 of a 21-race championship that takes us from here in Australia across the globe and the eventual season finale at the Yas Island circuit in Abu Dhabi. So here we are at Albert Park Circuit. 3.3 miles of public roads, closed for the weekend of course, make for a bumpy surface with little undulation. There are 16 corners around the lake with the best passing opportunities coming at turn 1 and turn 3. We have plenty of changes to the sport this year with tweaks to the regulations, a fresh looking spread of tyre compounds and of course some changes to the roster of car manufacturers. It's goodbye to Sauber and hello once again to the classic name of Alfa Romeo in Formula One. It's also goodbye to Force India. They've been rebranded as Racing Point. Joining me to take you through all the action of the 2019 Formula One season is Anthony Davidson. And it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Crofty. Always happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting underway. Last year was Mercedes' 5th Constructors' title in a row, although for the first half of the season it was absolutely neck and neck with the Ferraris. Hopefully this year we can see the chasing pack take that final step, as I'd love to see a championship contest all the way up to the final race in Abu Dhabi. Another story to keep an eye on is the performance of Red Bull, who have switched to the Honda power unit this year. What that will mean for both their performance and reliability remains to be seen.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, with Sebastian Vettel starting alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Bottas, Leclerc, Max Verstappen and Albon, Ricciardo, Perez, Norris and Kevin Magnussen, Sainz, Raikkonen, Pierre Gasly and Hülkenberg. Lucky, Fiat, Romain Grosjean and Lance Stroll, Kubica and George Russell ends our grid lineup. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
We've qualified above where we expected to be, so try your best to hold on to this position in the race.
Jeff, I will in fact hold that position, hopefully, and look at the strategy. It is overall going to be a one-stop strategy, and everyone is going to be starting on a soft. You can either go on to mediums or hards. Now, I didn't really know what to do, to be fair, but I was going to just stick to the soft-medium strategy, or maybe go to soft-hard in case my tire was pretty bad. So, yeah, let's get on with the race. Now it's time for the Australian Grand Prix, as we have the 5 red lights coming on, and it's the lights out and away we go for the first race of the season, as we had an okay start, but Grosjean and Kvyat seemed to want to get past me, as I was now being put in a awkward position, but I did have a little bit of collision with Grosjean, and eventually Grosjean tries to overtake us, but we of course have the better traction, and eventually this means that we get past him, and eventually we're going to send a double overtake on, well, I was going to send a double overtake, but I knew it was a bit risky, so eventually I tried to get past Hülkenberg, kind of have a little bit of touch with him, and eventually Gasly does get past Raikkonen, as Gasly and Raikkonen are squabbling through these set of corners, but because Gasly is a bit of a poor exit, we're eventually able to get past him, and we once again do a little bit of wheel tapping. So overall, it seems like we've had a pretty good start, so we've gained 2 positions from our starting position, as we're up to P13 now, with Raikkonen just ahead, and yeah, there is going to be probably a lot of squabbling in the midfield, since the midfield cars are really close together in this game, so yeah. Eventually, it does look like, though, the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton has got a massive lead over everyone else. As you can see on the minimap, there's just a green dot just absolutely far away from everyone else. As yeah, eventually, I go a little bit wide, which doesn't really help, as I am pretty quick through that corner, but it is very risky, like I said earlier in qualifying, that you can do a mistake and easily end your race there. So yeah, and as it looks like the midfield is really having a bit of a battle, to be fair, as I can see a lot of side-by-side going on. And eventually, Raikkonen, I was going to look for a send on Raikkonen, but I knew there wasn't really a gap, to be fair. So I'm not going to try and go for anything risky, of course, as Hamilton is leading the field by a bit of a comfortable margin ahead of Sebastian Vettel, and Valtteri Bottas is in P3. So, yeah, and eventually heading into lap 2, it does seem like, though, that yeah, I do have some poor exits on some of the corners compared to mine, which means I could eventually do something. As the reason I paused my menu is because I was playing on a wired controller connected to a wire, sometimes the wire disconnected. And I didn't want that to happen because my controller had a bit of a poor battery, which meant that the battery could just run out and ruin my race. Because if the controller died, well, it didn't like die, or it was on low battery mode, this meant that the controller won't like have any vibrations for when I have like traction or braking, which would make it a lot harder for me to drive. So yeah, eventually though, it does seem like there's now around 3 trains on the minimap. There's the top 6, the midfield, and in the back markers, as it looks like Stroll, Gibby, and both Williams are fighting at the back. After Ross, I think, had a good start. I was up to P16 at some point, or P17, I'm not sure. As yeah, it looks like we are kind of struggling though with straight line speed, as we are very poor on that corner. And yeah, we are very rapid through this corner, which is really going to help us, to be fair, as we're going to close it a little bit on Raikkonen, but we're not going to try and make a move, of course, as Ricciardo is in a pretty good P7 on his Renault debut after he left Red Bull due to him not being satisfied with the team. He's doing a pretty good job, as we almost go into Raikkonen. I was going to try and send it on him, but I didn't want to overtake Raikkonen, since if I did it and I was slower than him, I would probably hold him up, to be fair. As yeah, Hamilton is just absolutely rapping and destroying everyone else. And there is a massive train on the minimap, as you can see, but Gasly is coming a little bit closer. He wants to make a move on us. I do leave him in space, of course, because I don't want to do any dirty driving. But we're eventually going to stay ahead of him as we have a better exit. And looks like I'm starting to lose a little bit of time to train ahead. Probably, I don't know if I have poor pace at this track or I just have 1 lap pace, but that is really concerning. If I'm slow here, then I could eventually lose a couple of the positions behind me, which would be really bad, to be fair. So yeah, like I said earlier, mostly I will probably going to be doing a one-stop strategy, like I said on the strategy board, and I wasn't that slow compared to Kimi, to be fair. I was sticking with him, and Gasly had a little bit of a gap behind because he was battling behind with Grosjean and Hulkenberg, because they actually battled a bit, and I get my first warning already on that 3, which is not good, to be fair, because I do not want to get a lot of track limit penalties like a lap, like I did in Canada, where I got 12 seconds of penalties during the 2018 Canadian race, which we're not going to talk about, costing me literally P8, but still, that was a pretty alright race. But yeah, it looks like Ricciardo's really trying to keep these positions, but he's really struggling, as you saw in the R&D chart earlier at the beginning of the video, that the Renault is one of the lower midfield cars, which is not really going to help, to be fair, as we have a bit of a poor exit, as we always have poor exits outside that corner, which is very concerning, as once again my controller was doing whatever, and was trying to ruin my race. So yeah, you might see a lot of me pausing the menu in this video. So yeah. All I have to do now was just stick with this train and eventually just stay in the zone, like the DRS zone, and then I wouldn't have any problems. Which would really be helping me, as I was really starting to struggle already with tires, because I'm pretty bad at tire wear in this game. So yeah, let's see what. Eventually skipping a little bit to lap 6, yeah, so Jeff kind of asked me if I wanted to change my strategy, as I was actually already struggling, as the tire was concerningly high on my car. As, I don't know, yeah, look, it was already 40%, and it was only lap 6, meaning that these tires would probably explode by like lap 12. I mean, my paper one was already meant to be lap 12, as Gasly tries to overtake me, and eventually barges me a little bit, so we're down to P14 again. As, yeah, eventually I'm not going to bother fighting, to be fair, since I was already struggling, so I knew this would probably just be a lonely race if I kept struggling. I mean, I could hold off these quicker cars behind for Kimi, but Kimi wasn't struggling, to be fair. He was actually holding position, to be fair, as we're going to get close to Gasly, but we just don't have the straight line speed, to be fair. As eventually we do have the DRS, however, though, and we could try and make a move on Gasly into this corner here. As we're going a bit quick, to be fair, and I'm going to do a bit of a set on Gasly, which I almost go off the grass, to be fair. I almost go off track, and that was a pretty clean overtake, not gonna lie. I was expecting it to go way worse, but this did mean that we lost a lot of time, however, to Raikkonen and the train ahead. Ricciardo seems to have actually broken away from the train, as both McLarens were starting to battle a lot. Yeah, they were actually already getting closer, to be fair. So this wasn't going to be a problem. Oh yeah, it does look like the midfield is practically bunched up, to be fair, and there isn't really anything happening, to be honest, except that the top 4, basically the Mercedes and the Ferraris, have broken away and have just left everyone in dust. It looks like there's a yellow flag, and I think it's one of the Red Bulls that's actually slowing down, and it is Alexander Albon, who has a mechanical issue, not even a third into the race, and he's going to retire, unfortunately, from the first race. So after a bit of a poor qualifying, he will, unfortunately, only do a lap. So, but unfortunately for me, a VSC came. Oh wait. Oh wait, yeah. A VSC came, and unfortunately I kind of sped a little bit too quick, and now I lost a bit of my front wing. So this was probably going to be a massive performance impact, as I would probably start struggling, as whenever I have even the tiniest front wing damage, I just struggle. Especially when the tires are old, which makes the car a bit undrivable, to be fair. Which is a little bit concerning, to be fair. So I thought to myself, hey, I'll stick with Raikkonen and try and this front wing damage did not in fact help, because I honestly could not take in most corners, and Gasly was probably going to try and overtake me here, but I was going to take the inside line, so Gasly would have to go around the outside, and eventually we stay ahead of Gasly, even though there is a little bit of debris. I don't know if that was a boulder or a debris, but yeah. We're going to skip to the pit stop, since that's where things get a little bit spicy. Now, eventually, Magnussen actually had an engine issue, so eventually I was able to get past him, and there were actually a couple of people who have pitted way earlier, because they were probably going to try and go for the hard tire, but eventually I pit after 11 laps, as I wanted to pit on lap 10, but Raikkonen unfortunately pit because he was ahead of me, so yeah. Eventually I decided to go into the pits, because I really wanted to get this front wing fixed, and unfortunately, because I had a little bit of issue with the front wing, I broke a little bit late and got a 5-second penalty. Oh dearie me, this race could not get any worse. Yeah, and it got worse. So I had to now change the front wing, and eventually... Also, now with a penalty on me, this eventually meant I had a very slow stop, which eventually meant I was down to P15. Well, wait, no, not P15, or P16 actually. Oh my, well, the race was not going to plan whatsoever, and eventually we were now down to P17. We were only ahead of both Williams, of Russell and Kubica, so eventually I knew that we had to make some ground up if we wanted to even finish higher than P15, which was where we started. So this was going to be a little bit of hard work, and this race could probably be ruined. But I knew that all hope was not lost whatsoever, so eventually a couple of laps later, I got up to Magnussen, who had his mechanical issue still, which meant we would probably easily get past him, and now we were back up to P16. So yeah, eventually I knew we could probably catch up easily. And with Kvyat just 1 second ahead of us, I knew we could easily push, because if his tires started to struggle, then eventually meant we could actually get him. And in fact, we were able to push, and eventually we closed down Kvyat just on 2 laps later. And eventually, because we had the DRS and some ERS, we were eventually able to get past him, as we had way more straight line speed than him, and he was starting to struggle already on the mediums. I think he was, I'm not sure, because he was slower than me. So eventually we're going to send it down the inside and get past Kvyat, and now we're back up to P15. And with a train of cars just ahead, if we just pushed enough, we could actually get close. But it was actually a yellow flag, and that's because Sergio Perez had a mechanical issue, and this meant he retired. Now, eventually this would get a little bit weird, but eventually I tried to get past him, but Perez swerves into us, and we lose our front wing again. So yeah, Perez is now out, and we hit him. Now we've lost half of our front wing. Are you actually kidding me? What is this game, man? But, our prayers would be saved, as eventually we had a safety car. Thank God, man. We actually had a safety car. So eventually we could easily pit and just rejoin close to everyone, because everyone will have to bunch up again. Eventually that was what I did, and because we had to serve our penalty, this meant we would probably be last anyway, but... yeah. We were now on a fresh mediums till the end, and a brand new front wing. So... this would massively help us, hopefully, even though we had a 13-second pit stop. We didn't have any sets, we only had 1 set of hards left, so if this did happen again somehow, we would probably pay for hards again. So yeah, eventually we now just had to wait till the safety car came in about a couple of laps time, and we were practically last now. So yeah. there isn't really anything to say, as the safety car was right there, but we just had to overtake it because, yeah. If we actually had a much slower stop, however, we would have actually been lapped, which would have probably ruined our race. So yeah, eventually we're going to skip to the safety car coming in. So eventually on lap 19, or practically the start of lap 20, the safety car was coming in and it was now time to race again. I knew I could easily get back up to where I was, and with a lot of fuel I could now actually push, and I decided to go rich. So yeah, now it was time for the restart, and with now 9 laps to go, let's see what is going to happen. To be fair, as Kubica has a bit of a poor exit, which means we are going to be getting close to him, and we're going to try and get past him down on the inside as we're going to do that, but unfortunately we go a little bit deep, and oh no, yeah. We end up snapping, and we end up losing a lot of time now, so it kind of got worse, to be fair, but I wasn't going to give up this easily, to be fair. I knew I could easily not finish class, as I knew this would just not be possible, to be fair, and Ragnar was actually running in a high points position. I think it was almost P6, which would be great points for the team. And, yeah, in fact, just halfway through the lap later, I actually got close again to Kubica, and eventually, with my ERS and the rich fuel mix, I eventually was going to be able to send it down the inside of him just at this corner, and eventually we're now back up to P17. So yeah, there was a bit of a gap ahead to the train of all the other cars, as, yeah, to be fair, that snap did kind of cost Kubica a little bit of time, because he was very far behind now. But, yeah, eventually, I think one of the McLaren was actually has damage, because Carlos Sainz, or someone, is really slow, as once again my controller was disconnected, and I seriously need to do something about it. So yeah, eventually with the train of cars ahead, I knew what to do. And eventually, because Sainz actually had damage, this meant I could actually close in on everyone else, because they were all battling, and eventually, yeah, you can see how I was catching up to them very quickly, to be fair. This just showed how Sainz was actually struggling. I think it was Sainz who had damage, because Sainz was ahead of Norris, I think, after the safety car. And yeah, all the air drivers was going to be going to the end, but because they were on old tyres and I was on somewhat fresh new tyres, I eventually knew I could do something. As yeah, eventually we were saying green sectors, showing that we were actually pretty quick. And yeah, look, Sainz is just holding everyone up, and he's holding up Russell, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, and Kvyat. So yeah, eventually, I don't know if Magnussen still had his mechanical issue, I don't think he did, to be fair. But the AI were very slow through here, and eventually I would close in a little bit, even though it wouldn't really be enough, to be fair, for me to make any sort of move, as they're really battling, to be fair, and a lot of the midfield drivers have already broken away, and oh, okay, I don't know what is going on here, but they're all just going really slow eventually. So yeah, Bottas is now saying the fastest lap. He is now quick, as we're going to send it on Russell, and eventually we're going to get past him. Even though I'm not very good at this corner, Russell's going to keep the inside, and oh, my bad, Russell. So I may have sent Russell into the wall, and that probably meant his race was over anyway. Yeah, they were really going feisty here, as eventually Kvyat got a little bit of damage, and Sainz had a poor exit, which eventually meant I couldn't get past him. And with Kvyat having damage also, this meant I could probably get past him also, as we're going to try and send it on Sainz, but unfortunately I don't know what I'm doing, but I cut the track. I literally forgot I had 2 warnings, so now I had a 3-second penalty, which meant my race was probably going to be a lot harder now. But with Kvyat and Magnussen probably fighting ahead, I knew I could probably get P13 if I managed to gap them enough, and yeah. This would probably be an alright result after what has happened.
Behind it, they're on old mediums. Their tyres are 10 laps old. The time last lap was a 1 minute 32.9. We're trailing our teammate by 14.3 seconds. They're on old hards. They're in 7th. The time last lap was a 1:27.4.
So, yeah, Ragnar was having a pretty good race, and was up in 7th. He was actually fighting for 6th place with Ricardo. So, yeah, and eventually Kvyat and Magnussen are a bit slow, so eventually I knew I could probably get past both of them because I was on fresh mediums. Kvyat was on old mediums and had wing damage, but I don't know how he was actually sticking with Magnussen. Maybe Magnussen had wing damage also, I was not sure, to be fair. As it does seem like Kvyat really wants to get past Magnussen, as he's going to try and go around the outside of him. But Magnussen still has the inside line, and they're going to touch again, I think. And Magnussen gets sent a little bit wide and has a poor exit, which eventually means we're going to be able to get past him again. Okay, well, again, because we're already ahead of him before us, eventually, I don't think he has damage, he's probably just struggling, to be fair, as we're going to keep us Magnussen once again, and now we had Kvyat, who had a broken front wing, just ahead of us, so eventually we could probably make 2 overtakes in just 1 lap, which would be pretty awesome, to be fair, as we go a little bit deep, though, and, yeah, I just hated the final 2 corners on Australia for some reason, they're just really hard to do, but eventually we have the DRS, and Kvyat really can't do anything, he's quite vulnerable, to be fair to us, as, yeah, eventually we can't get close to him enough. But we are going to get close to him here, though, as where we overtook him a couple of laps earlier before the safety car. Or it was his teammate, I'm not too sure. As, yeah, Kvyat eventually can't really do anything. We're going to send it down inside of him, and eventually we're going to get past him. And now we're up to P13. Now, to be fair, nothing really happened after I overtook Magnussen and Kvyat, except they started fighting, and I eventually jabbed them by 4 seconds. And eventually I got close to Nico Hulkenberg, guys, because he was struggling on his old medium tyres and I had some newer ones. This eventually meant that I could stick with him, get some slipstream, and eventually gap Magnussen and Kvyat even more. So I was probably going to finish net P13 unless I did some sort of stupid mistake, which luckily I didn't.
They're on old mediums. Their tyres are 16 laps old. The time last lap was a 1 minute 28.2. You're gaining by 8 tenths. 8 tenths.
I mean, I could just get past Hulkenberg because he could actually slow me down if I didn't get past him, but to be fair, I didn't notice whilst I was doing the race. So yeah, I eventually just stayed behind him, got the slipstream, and eventually, bam. I knew I would just probably stay close to Hulkenberg, and I didn't want to take any risks, because if I crash into him, my race could probably be ruined easily. I did a bit of a poor corner there, which would probably get me closer to Magnussen again. I hoped Kvyat could have overtaken him again and started fighting with him, but his wing damage really did not help him, to be fair. As, yeah, George Russell's practically last place by a massive margin because he actually had wing damage. So, yeah, that's not really going to help him, to be fair. And eventually, heading on to the final lap of this race, it does look like we're going to probably finish P13, but it is both Mercedes currently in a 1-2, as the safety car did practically help them, as Bottas has been quite rapid and has been trying to stay close to Hamilton, but Hamilton overall does have the superiority over him, so I don't think he can really do anything, to be fair. And yeah, Raikkonen's actually P6 right now, so this will be a great result for the team, even though I wish it was a double points finish, because I thought I knew I had the pace for points, to be fair, after the safety car. I knew I actually had the pace for points, but it just never came close. It just never came close to me, unfortunately. So yeah. But I'm still satisfied with a P13 finish, to be fair. Considering I started P15, it is practically better because I gained 2 positions. Even though if I didn't get that wing damage, I would have probably been like P11 or P10 actually. I would have even been maybe close to Raikkonen and a bunch where the points are fighting for. Which really would have been a much better race, but I can't really complain, as Lewis Hamilton is going to take the flag just out of his teammates with the Ferrari in P3, and I don't know which one it is, but Max Verstappen is going to finish P4 just ahead of the other Ferrari. And eventually, it does seem like that Raikkonen is going to finish P6 just ahead of Ricciardo, and means that this is a very good result for Alfa Romeo on the 2019 debut season. As yeah, eventually, we're going to round off the final corner and we're going to finish P13 in our debut race for the team, which, to be fair, isn't that bad.
Good job, you did really well. Super driving.
Yet another historic win under their belts. Well done to the team at Mercedes. Tell me, Ant, how did they manage to achieve this win?
I really feel the track layout combined with the track temperatures we saw today suited their car. These cars come alive when the tyres are just at the right temperature, and the driver did a great job managing that as well. They just look so comfortable out there. It's like anything, it always looks so easy when it all just clicks.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it. And now let's take a look at the drivers' standings. Lewis Hamilton takes the lead of the Drivers' Championship. Let's focus on the driver of the day. Anthony Davidson, who do you pick?
It has to be said, Roman Grosjean certainly had my eye today. He made impressive gains during the race.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes moved to the top of the table. Well, that was certainly an incredible weekend of racing. Be sure to join myself and Ant for more exciting Formula One action soon.
So, yeah, here are the overall results. Mercedes get a 1-2 just ahead of Vettel, Verstappen, and Leclerc. Raikkonen finishes P6, which is a very good result for the team, and I'm pretty happy for him, to be honest. Just ahead of Ricciardo, Norris, Gasly, and Grosjean. So a lot of teams scored points today. It was only Racing Point and Williams who didn't get any points. Stroll was P11, Hulkenberg was P12, P12 ourselves, we were P13. We would have been maybe P12 with a penalty if we could overtake Hulkenberg, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Just ahead of Magnussen, Kvyat, Kubica, Sainz, Russell, and finally, Perez and Alexander Albon did not finish the race after they both had mechanical issues. So the standings will overall just be the same as the race results. And in the Constructors, Alfa Romeo now P4 with a very good result, with Mercedes leading ahead of Ferrari, Red Bull. Then we got Alfa, Renault, McLaren, Toro Rosso, Haas, with Racing Point and Williams not scored any points. So yeah, I'm probably going to end the episode here now, so see you guys, take care. I don't really have anything else to say, so yeah.